Hello, Mr. Masha. Good afternoon. Welcome. Can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you.
Great.
This must be your favorite top.
All right.
I said this top. It must be your favorite one. Happy Independence to you.
Happy
Hi,
Independence.
Brenda. Hi, Kola.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm great. So
Hi,
I'm just trying to get a hang of all this stuff. So 1 second, please.
alrighty.
Uh, so I think you get a shock when you see what I'm wearing, but I can explain it. Yes. Thank you. Hi, everyone. How are you?
Hi, Rotimi. We'll talk about your military camouflage later.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm on the farm at the moment. Timing is just a bit off, but it's fine.
Oh, sorry about that. And I saw Mrs. Adelaja-Kuye as Miss Nigeria a few minutes ago, but she's turned the video off. Thank you all so much for being here right on time.
Good morning. How are you?
Good afternoon, ma'am. Welcome, Miss Umoru. I don't believe I still made that mistake after your.
I muted my mic, so good afternoon. Hi, Angela. Good to see you. Her mic is muted as well.
Hey, it's Angel. Thanks.
No, Angel. Hi. Apologies about that. Okay, Kola is muted. It looks like we're all here.
It's okay.
Okay, so I think I'll just stay muted whilst we wait for the others. Happy Independence
Day, everyone.
Happy Independence Day. I was waiting for everyone to join the call before I did say any greetings. Kola is muted. Rotimi, good to see you.
Hello, everyone. How are you?
Hi, how are you?
Kola. Been a long while.
It has been. How about as well?
All is well.
Very good, very good.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you both.
Okay, so I think I'll just stay muted till we're ready to start. Okay, David, so you know I'm here. I can hear everyone. Yes. I will just...
Sorry, I was just, I know platform, the main session is kind of still ongoing. So I'm just trying to tell them that we're starting off because I don't want to keep anybody waiting. I know they kind of ran a bit over schedule. So, but thank you very much, everyone, for being here. Such a honor and a privilege. I hope at the end of this, I will have better clarity into my foray in Greek. Mr. Akumah, why is he not here? Hello, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you. Rotimi Williams, I like your swag.
Okay, how are you? This swag is very necessary. How's it going?
I'm fine, thank you.
Good to see you. Long time.
Same here. Yes, how are you doing? Well done with your work.
Thank you, bro. Thank you so much.
Yeah. I was actually here, so I heard the conversation between amongst the rest of the panelists, but I was here as an attendee, so I've just joined in as one of the
Okay,
panelists.
okay. Panel.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also,
you're in Lagos or Lagos?
yes, I'm in Lagos. I mean, it's a lot of traveling in Lagos, Anambra, Ogun State. Yeah, but I'm in Lagos now.
Okay.
Yeah. And you?
I'm in the bush. I'm in Shandam in Plateau.
Okay, that's fine.
I'm in Plateau, yeah. We're producing here this season, so.
Okay. Yeah, well done.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, that's all. All right, I think I'll stay mute until we're ready to start.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Platform Nigeria at 60 digital breakout session on agriculture. I thank you all for signing in on time, and I crave your indulgence for another 4 minutes to start at 3:05 p.m. Thank you very much. Good afternoon once again, and welcome to the Platform Nigeria at 60 digital breakout session on agriculture. I thank you for joining this session, and I welcome you. My name is David Ashiru, and I will be the moderator for this session. Thank you very much. Just a few house rules. All our attendees should please make use of the chat function to ask your questions and to make any comments that you have. We have the panelists all seeing your questions, and later on, we'll be taking your questions as time allows us. We have 5 panelists here with us today that I will be introducing shortly, seasoned people in the agriculture industry of Nigeria, and they've all been here to just share with us their wealth of knowledge and experience. So I look forward to a very amazing and educational period with them, actually, and you all. So to start, I'd like to introduce Mr. Kola Masha. He is the Managing Director of Baban Gunnar, an award-winning, high-impact, financially sustainable, and highly scalable social enterprise, which is part-owned by the farmers they serve. Baban Gunnar was created to specifically attract youth to agriculture and away from the looming instability of extremist groups. Kola has significant leadership experience in venture capital, corporate finance, business development, marketing, and operations across 4 continents. Mr. Masha, welcome to the platform Nigeria at 60 breakout session on agriculture. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And then I'll introduce Mr. Rotimi Williams. He's an expert, advocate, entrepreneur, and solution provider. He is the founder of Kerriksok Rice Farm, Resolute 4.0, and Insight Agro. An advocate and serial entrepreneur dedicated to transforming background in economics, finance, and development to dig deep into how Africans can be solution providers to the impediments of their own economies. Mr. Williams, welcome to the platform Nigeria at 60 breakout session on Agric.
Pleasure, thank you.
Thank you, sir. And immediately, I'll move on to introduce Dr. Angel Adelaja-Kuye, a development consultant and entrepreneur. She is the founder of Fresh Direct Produce and Agro-Allied Services, an urban farming and ag tech company in Abuja. She brings together communities and focus on engaging youth in agriculture with technologies. She is currently the Senior Special Assistant to the Governor of Ogun State on Agriculture. Welcome, ma'am, to the Platform Nigeria breakout session on agriculture.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, ma'am. And I move swiftly as well to introduce Miss Mosunmola Umoru, aka Pretty Miss Farmer. She's an agribusiness entrepreneur and industry thought leader. She is the founder and chief realization officer of Farm Shop, which engages principally in farming, food production, processing, and distribution of a wide range of fresh products, fresh food and packaged products in Nigeria. Her dream is for Nigeria to attain national food security through increased investment in the education of youth and women, especially within the local communities. Thank you, ma'am. Welcome to the platform Nigeria at 60 breakout session on agriculture.
Thank you so much for having me on the platform today. And
Thank you, ma'am.
Independence Day, everyone.
Happy Independence Day to you all. And finally, but not the least, I welcome Mr. Onyeka Akumah, a serial entrepreneur and the founder and CEO of Farm Crowdy, Nigeria's first digital agriculture platform with a network of over 182,000 farmers, connecting with finance, market access, and technical expertise across all 36 states in Nigeria, including the FCT. Onyeka is also the co-founder of Plenty Waka, Nigeria's premier bus hailing app. Mr. Akumah, I welcome you to the platform Nigeria at 60 breakout session on agriculture. You are welcome.
Thank you, Mr. David. Thanks for having me.
And again, let me just echo with Pretty Miss Farmer. Happy independence, happy 60th anniversary to Nigeria and to each and every one of us here. At least I'm not 60, but it's the time to be. I love the hope that we have in this nation. If you've been watching the platform all through the day since morning, speaker after speaker seem to kind of exude some hope for this country, to turn the corner, to turn the tide. And our reason of having you all here is to tell us, how can we turn the tide with agriculture? Called the giant of Africa ever since I was a baby. Now I'm almost 50. Called the power in Africa, the food hub of Africa. A number of things have been called, but how do we become this, even in the shortest possible time? So my first question is actually going to go to you, Mr. Masha. The range of policies and initiatives to strengthen agriculture as an income mainstay for farmers, thereby alleviating poverty and forex earning for the country over these years, seem to have fallen short of expectations. Why is this?
Well, I think to be frank, we are making a fair amount of progress. I think if you look at the rice sector in particular in Nigeria, there's been a dramatic growth in the amount of production in Nigeria and a dramatic growth in the amount that is actually processed in Nigeria if we look over the last 10 years. If you look at the poultry sector in Nigeria, there's been an astronomical growth in the growth of the poultry sector over the last 2 decades. If you look at maize production alone, you've seen that we've grown from about 3 million metric tons in the early 2000s to about 12 million metric tons today. So there has been a significant amount of growth. I think the challenge that we've seen is a lot of that growth has been through increasing the area under production versus increasing productivity. And so I think, fundamentally, where we still have a ways to go is around dramatically trying to improve farm level productivity. Now, I think there have been quite a few steps by the government to help to improve this. If we look at take for example, the fertilizer space, prior administrations ran direct subsidy programs that basically competed with the private sector. Today, however, if you look at the fertilizer space, the initiatives of the government are actually trying to enable the private sector and actually crowding in private sector capital, which I think will continue to enhance the quantity and quality of fertilizer in the space, which will be very critical. I think for me, I think there are quite a few steps that are being taken in the right direction. The reality, though, is we have to recognize these things do take a little bit of time. If you look at some of the best examples of agricultural development from places like Thailand, other places in Southeast Asia, you're looking about a decade-long journey, ensuring that you stay focused. And once you stay focused on the fundamentals of trying to ensure that farmers have the right knowledge, farmers have access to the credit to buy the quantity and quality of products they need, they have access to good quality inputs, and they have access to the storage and marketing services to enable them to optimize prices for themselves post-harvest. If you focus on those fundamentals, 5, 10, 15 years, you will see continued development and growth.
Thank you, Mr. Masha. Before I let you go, you said 2 things I want to hold on to. Time. We're 60 years old, and you said this would take 5, 10, 15. So let's kind of take an average 10 years. At which point are we going to be able to focus? I watched your interview, I think was it last week or 2 weeks ago on MSNBC, I think it was, where you spoke about the challenge of fertilizer, forex not being made available for fertilizer importation as a whole, blanket. Meanwhile, from your words, we need phosphates and stuff that is not available locally. So my concern a lot of times is that, look, we keep having this kind of policy somersault, which gives us 2 steps forward, 3 backward. So inevitably, we only actually had 1 step forward. So which way Nigeria for agri? Do we have to have like a constitutional document that says this is the policy for agri and nobody changes it? Or how do we move agri in Nigeria to such a place where it takes its rightful position? We have income generation, we have food secure, we have good employment, where and how?
Well, I think it comes down to exactly the word you mentioned, focus. I think oftentimes, if you look at the policies that have come out over the years, they tend to be very very broad. Talking about 10, 15, 20 different types of crops or livestock. The reality is, if you look at countries around the world, they followed a very similar path. They typically look at 3 to 5 commodities that they are confident that they can have a comparative advantage. What they then do is and the other key thing is those 3 to 5 commodities have the potential to, that probably close to about 80% of the farmers within the country can produce one of those 3 to 5 commodities. So you're getting that economic boost as well. And then fundamentally, what the government does is they align their investments from R&D to infrastructure to incentives for the private sector to catalyze in significant amounts of capital from the private sector, both domestically and internationally. And with that level of focus, what you see is then you'll start to see that 10 to 15 year transformation. But it requires that level of focus on those 3 to 5. And I think you're right. I think there may be an opportunity to kind of lock in some of these types of initiatives where it's bigger than any particular administration to ensure that level of consistency. Because I think the reality is the policy somersaults that you do see tend to happen because the reality is we are humans. We want to have ownership on things, and that ownership tends to come when you are able to be the creator of that particular initiative. So that's one of the reasons why you do tend to see these new initiatives creep up now and again.
Okay, thank you very much, Kola, for that. Let me come over to you, Angel. You're a passionate voice for change in a Greek, sustainable change, I must say. But like I said, we're 60 years. The perennial factors of rain-fed agriculture, low productivity due to poor planting material, low yield seed varieties, inadequate fertilizer application, weak agricultural extension system, and landholding issues, etc., keep plaguing agriculture in Nigeria. How and in what order should this be tackled for lasting positive effect? Over to you, ma'am.
Well, I will say that there is no silver bullet for the agricultural sector. It is a very diverse and dynamic system and sector. And so, unfortunately, you have to make sure that you're putting enough into all aspects. You have to make sure that from the productivity end, you are training your farmers on good agricultural practices. You're ensuring that they have quality inputs. You're putting funding into research and development. As well as ensuring that you're getting new people into the research space to bring up new ideas. So you also have to fund education in agriculture, agricultural science, and research and development like biochemistry and other things that add to agricultural developments for the space. You also have to make sure that you're providing finance for the farmers. It has to be a holistic opportunity. Then you have to have ways to make sure there's linkage to market, there's coordination of the farmers. We're doing a lot of that, but more needs to be done. You'll see that the federal government has tried to put a lot of funds towards agriculture through the CBN, through NERSL. They're still learning the ropes. They're still trying to understand how best they should implement some of these programs to make sure that the real farmers are getting access to these, and to make sure also that once farmers have access to any of these interventions, they're able to repay back these loans, or they're able to make use of the grants, etc. Even the issue of access to land for farmers in the Southwest. The Southwest has a very dense vegetation. So one of the major hurdles is just getting cleared lands to farm, and though we have very rich soils, the high cost of land clearing becomes a deterrent for farmers. So it's not to say focus on one thing or focus on another, but you have everybody playing their part, and you have them putting significant amount of funds and investment into that space. If government were to pick priority areas, I would focus less on.
Yes, ma'am. Angel seems to be frozen. Okay, let me just move on while we wait for her to reconnect. She has spoken of land, and I want to come to you, Miss Umoru. Recently, I think earlier in the year, an agency was set up to kind of employ 774 youth, looking at land and making land available to them.
You lost
Okay,
me there for a
we have a land. Oh, okay, was it me?
second.
Hi, Angel. Can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, David, we can hear.
Yeah, so to cut a long story short, you have to make sure that you're investing in all of these areas.
Thank you very much for that. Can you hear me, Angel?
Yes, I can.
Okay, sorry. I was actually going to give you a follow-on question, which I was going to pass to Miss Umoru before. But while you're here, you spoke about land, and I know recently now the Agency for Agricultural Land Development spoke about having like 1,000 youth in all the 774 local governments in Nigeria, access to land. Anybody that wants to do farming, is that a way or the way to go to resolve the access to land perspective or issue with agriculture?
I would say that the effort is appreciated. However, I think that we need to have a more targeted and specific way to look at access to land. I think that for those who want to farm, they're willing to get into agriculture. They're willing to pay for the land clearing, but the high cost means that they need financing for that. So you want to get people who have a plan for themselves, who have a strategy, paying rent on a monthly or yearly or quarterly or seasonal basis if they get access to that cleared land. But what ends up happening is that you see organization and then you farm for 1 year, the program is over, and then you stop. If we're focusing on clearing and opening land, I think we need to have more strategic programs. I think this concept of, I think CBN right now has a 5-star program for cassava, for example, where they say farmers should take 5 hectares, and they like for the farmers to be aggregated into one space. So you're not just benefiting from having aggregation of farmers so that they can leverage on the power of numbers and make sure that they can have a level of coordination for the farmers as well. Up with this concept of maybe farm estates where people can kind of come on, take their land and leverage on shared resources. I think that that's where the lands are. What are the things that we want to do that as well? So I think there's so much more to think about than just saying we're going to put land, open land in every local government. I think that some local governments do better with poultry, fishery, and other things, and that needs less land. So I don't know what a dynamic strategy.
Thank you very much, Angel. I think we got quite a few things from you there, but I'll come back to you in a minute. Let me go to you, Mosunmola. Your focus is food security. Do we have the capacity to meet the ever-increasing demand for food as a nation, much less of generating needed foreign exchange through exportable cash crops? You're muted.
Thank you, David. Thank you for that question. Off the top of my head, literally, the answer is yes. But if you take insights from what Kola and Angel have said so far, you would realize that there is huge potential for increasing production. However, there is need for strategic investment to enhance productivity, not just focus on production. In Nigeria today, the country sits on over 80 million hectares of arable land. We have land for primary production. We have water bodies for aquaculture. And if you go across several value chains. If you are looking at crops, if you're looking at livestock, we have huge potentials to produce across the country. There are 36 states, and each state has potential for certain commodity that they have comparative advantage at. What we haven't done enough of, which is what I'm just re-echoing what my colleagues have said, is the need for us to be very strategic. You can't, I mean, you wake up and you give everybody land. Like Angel asked, who's going to prep the land for the farmers? And I will delve into what a scheme that Kola is running with the Babangona scheme. You give access to land on one hand. Who provides the inputs to the farmers? When does the inputs come in? So there's a lot of fragmentation across the ag sector in Nigeria until we come together and find holistic ways of solving this problem and not assuming, because you see, there's also the issue around continuity. So there's a policy every 4 years, and then we do not measure the impact of the policies from the previous term. As we go into the new term, we create a new grandiose plan, and we're not saying, why did we fail the previous time and what can we do better? You know, there's got to be consistency in policy, and there's going to be will. Look, today, as it stands, many Nigerians are drifting away from oil. Those with financial resources are looking for where to invest. However, the fragmentation is not allowing them focus or plan adequately. You want people to come into food production. Like I said, the answer is yes, we can actually become food sufficient. But there's a big deterrent today that we have not even addressed. Who is tackling the issues of security? Farmers are no longer, especially in most of the farm settlements or farmsteads, the local communities, especially here in the Southwest, it's not very safe to go to the farm today unarmed. You're either attacked, mobbed, you know, there's so many challenges that the primary producer faces before they can even embark on production, you know. So the infrastructural gaps, road access to the farm locations, there's so many issues that we've got to fix first. So we can't treat one in isolation. We've got to find a holistic way to solve the problem. And we will be making some of those recommendations here today. So, I mean, I strongly believe that we're able to produce what we need, and we can begin to look at export to generate foreign exchange, and everyone can position strategically across the value chain, some in primary production, some in processing and value addition, people investing in logistics, people investing in storage, warehousing systems. There are opportunities for everyone to play. However, there's got to be an enabling environment for participation to occur effectively.
Thank you, Ms. Umoru. Interestingly, I'm sure while you were talking, unfortunately, I wasn't looking at his face. Rotimi must be smiling when you spoke about the security issue, because I was still telling him about being in camouflage today. So let me come to you, Mr. Williams. The World Bank has highlighted the negative and devastating impact continued insurgency in the Northeast and ongoing sporadic farmer-herdsmen conflict has on Nigeria's agricultural production. What measures can effectively resolve this menace and provide a lasting solution?
Okay, thank you very much for that question. I think Mosunmola has already touched on some of the issues. And I'd like to start by saying that the success of the agricultural sector depends largely on our ability to secure our farmlands or the rural area. If you look at the issues now, I mean, you're talking about trying to encourage the youth into agriculture. You're trying to talk about movement of investors into agriculture, but no one is really talking about the issues in the areas where the produce are being produced. For example, about 80 to 90% of the food we produce in Nigeria and consume in Nigeria are produced in the rural areas. And this is largely where most of this communal conflict, farmer header issue, and insurgency is also taking place. So it's very easy to see how this threatens food security. As part of my own contribution, I created Resolute 4.0 along with my co-founder, Joseph. and we launched in Plateau in Basa local government. We've been operating there for a year. And, you know, it's devastating to see what the impact of this conflict is on agriculture. We have farmers that no longer go to the big farms anymore. They now farm on smaller plots next to their homes. You know, in the last 7 days, I've had 9 farmers killed. You know, so it's that bad an issue that is ongoing. And I think it's high time that the federal government and the security forces actually look at these issues for what they are. You know, putting a blanket label on it as calling it banditry or whatever doesn't necessarily solve the problem. If it's a communal conflict within the community or sister communities, deal with the issue for what it is. If it's farmer-header issue, identify it and deal with it. If it's insurgency, identify it and deal with it. But just labeling, giving that blanket label is not necessarily going to work. And I think that's where the federal government needs to start from. What exactly is the issue, community by community, not state by state now, community by community. This is the issue. You're asking me what I was wearing camouflage earlier on. I can't go to the farm without security. So I had to partner with the Nigerian Army through the Nigerian Army farms and ranches. And we're producing rice together. That's the only way I can do what I love doing. Otherwise, I'm just going to sit at home because chances of being kidnapped or killed is too high without security. And like Mosun rightly said, you know, farmers going to the farm now, you sort of have to fight for the right to do your job. You know, if you don't have a gun, you have people that have guns around you, or some vigilantes securing you. Farming is not just carrying a hoe anymore. It's the ability to secure yourself, then farm, which is then a problem. You know, so I think the federal government really needs to look at this issue, especially if you're going to attract investment into these key areas. It'll be interesting to know what Kola also thinks about this, because his model that running. I just want to get a sense of how it's affecting all the other panelists, because there's about 5 of us. I can guarantee you that each one of us has experienced some level of insecurity, and this is just 5 people on the panel. So you can imagine what is going on in the wider industry. So to conclude, I think the federal government has a lot of work to do in identifying this issue and really tasking the security agencies in addressing the problem. You see, it's not just about putting what's it called? You know, this agro rangers. Agro rangers are not going to do anything without communication. I put a system in place for a year, and we've had no federal government support. In fact, it's the foreign government that are willing to help us. We're not even willing to fund our own issues, you know, solutions to our own issues. So these are part of the problems I see. So, I mean, we really need to step up and deal with the issues as it is.
Wow, thank you. Thank you. You know, you spoke about Resolute 4.0, and I think that takes me right to the corner of Onyeka. Mr. Akumah, you know,
Yes.
how do we as a country fully leverage technology in agriculture? You know, if you were listening, which I know you were, to what Rotimi said, he created Resolute 4.0 for how, you know, Rotimi, I'm not sure whether that goes beyond your location currently. It doesn't go to every other state in Nigeria. So how can we as a country fully leverage technology in agriculture, digital agriculture, you know, to restore and grow the economy in this post-COVID area? We've spoken about security. We've spoken about land issues. I want us to take technology beyond what I know Farm Crowdy has successfully done, which is getting access to capital and stuff to farmers across the country. What else can we do with technology?
Okay. Thanks, Mr. David, for that question. I think I'll start from what Rotimi said about Resolute 4.0. The big thing I have seen personally has been for us that have used technology in the agriculture space, many of the times we deploy technology to problems that we face first of all. Rotimi set out to be a major rice farmer, not to build Resolute 4.0 when he was starting out as a rice farmer. But his expertise in technology allowed him to collaborate with his partner to create that solution, which many people will need. I will need Resolute 4.0 for my protection as well, and the protection of my team members on the field. You know, but so what I'm getting at is technology, as it were. The way we have used it has been from problems we have faced, first of all, and then we find ways of using technology to solve that problem and then making it available to many other people to use. So in our own case in Farm Crowdy, when I started Farm Crowdy, I had the problem of identifying the right farmer that I was going to partner with to invest in his project. And then I'm able to get the right updates over a period. And then he's able to do his work on the farm, and I get updates. And then we're able to sell his produce and then share profit. That was how the business started. The difference between that and what it was up until early this year was that we started getting a crowd of people to do that. So I had communal effort in getting that funding to the farmers. Now we noticed very quickly that there were other things the farmers needed, not beyond money. The farmers needed technical expertise. Connecting them with the right technical expertise became a solution we created for them. They needed where to sell their farm produce. And in selling their farm produce, you need to create market access. So we created another solution for them. That gave birth to our Farm Proudly Trader platform. That gave birth to our Farm Proudly Aggregation platform. We noticed farmers struggle with getting access to inputs. We've set out over 100 aggregation centers that have between 15 and 30 metric tons of grains that can be housed in each one of them. Those aggregation centers are powered by technology. We noticed that farmers had issues with insurance. We set out to partner with an insurance company to now provide microinsurance for the farmers, where they can subscribe for an insurance package with as simple as sending an SMS to one point and then to a certain service, and then the SMS microinsurance package is now made available for the farmer. Now, if you see what I'm saying here, technology in itself doesn't just solve problems. We have problems first, then we take technology and use it to create quality, to create speed, to create those services that would enable anyone across the agricultural value chain plug into those services without having face-to-face interaction. You're able to use your mobile device, you're able to go on the website to do what you need to do, and then we get that solution to the individual or to the group of people. I think down the line, what we will see, if I conclude on the question, is across the food value chain, from whether it's production to what happens at the farm gate to moving the items from the farm gate to the processing plant and all the things that happen there in the processing plant, the packaging and then exporting. Across the entire value chain, there will be always opportunity for anyone to use technology, as it were, mobile services, web solutions, softwares to create a better way of doing the things we normally would do. And that's where we're now focusing on in Farm Proudly. I mean, if you've noticed, we've stopped the whole crowdfunding. We're no longer crowdfunding. That is on a different platform. So now we're now focused on where are those 6 different places that our technology can provide services to the farmer based on our own experience working with the farmers. And that is what has allowed us extend our services beyond the farmers that we're doing core production with, to farmers that are able to now work with us and get these services to do better work on their farms.
Thank you very much, Onyeka. Gosh, we could keep going, but I think I want to take some questions from the participants. We have quite a few questions coming on. Right in my head, I want to go back to Kola because Rotimi has put you into the conversation about security, and I know that's something Babangona has been doing for a while. At the same time, I saw Angel's hand go up while the security conversation was going on, but let me just take a breather here for a few seconds. So I'll just take out some questions. Apart from land, seedlings, and fertilizers, do you suppose government should look seriously into irrigation, especially in southern Nigeria? My brother lost hundreds of thousands because there was no rain to water his maize farm. So I'll give that over to you, Angel. And my reason for doing that is because of what you're doing with the vertical farming. Now, irrigation is a major issue. I remember one of the trips I've had to Israel. I kept looking at how they got water to the greenhouses, to the large commercial farms that they had there. But we don't seem to do that here. And earlier on, I asked Angel that we keep doing agriculture from the perspective of, oh, let's pray to the God of the rains for rain to fall. What should we be thinking about in terms of irrigation, Mrs. Adelaja-Kuye?
Absolutely, irrigation is key, not just in the Southwest, but across the country. I think one of the comparative advantages for some of the farmers in the North, for example, Kebbi, where they're doing rice, is that it's very easy for them to sink a well. They don't have to go as deep, so it doesn't cost as much. In the Southwest, in some areas, it's difficult for them to get to the water table. However, you have a lot of water bodies, and we've put a lot of funding, well, the federal government has put a lot of funding into irrigation projects that lead to nowhere. So you'll see that they go to the river basins, they'll go to the dams, and they will develop infrastructure for irrigation. They've put in irrigation projects and done irrigation in certain areas, but there has to be some level of continuity for those projects. There has to be a way that you make those projects sustainable by making sure that they're commercialized. So as much as I agree on the fact that we need to put infrastructure in place for agriculture, I believe that it has to be market driven. And I believe that it has to be done in such a way where people can actually pay for the amenities of those infrastructure. Otherwise, we will not be able to recoup the funds from those projects and people will not be able to get that. And I think that goes back to the conversation that they were having about, I think earlier I said, I would rather take money from security and infrastructure and put it into agriculture. As much as I know that security is a big, focuses on infrastructure and then defense. And when you look at that, you realize, what are we actually getting for the expenses that we've spent on infrastructure and defense? A lot of work is being done, a lot of money is being spent on procurement. But I think the concept of community policing, I think the concept of making
I think we've lost Angel.
sure that there are laws that promote, for example, Randy involved in that policing effort is also something that is very important. If you can get the communities engaged, and you can get them to start in place that actually push people to focus on keeping their spaces secure and making sure that, let's say for this farmer herders issue, they're to land. The whole issue that we have is resource scarcity. And people are engaging in these acts because of the fact that we have not put enough infrastructure into the rural areas themselves. So for me, as much as I understand that security is a big issue, I would target my security interventions and target the money that I put into security into areas that need things with infrastructure. The infrastructure that I would be focusing on is rural electrification and rail systems that lead to area as well. So,
thank you very much, Angel. We lost you in some of them, but I'm going to come back to you because I've seen a question there directed at you. But before I do that, Onyeka, I'm coming to you. I remember, I have a friend, probably a mutual friend that you apparently spoke to when Farm Crowded was about to start. And up to now, he talks to me about what a lost opportunity I have not invested. But someone is saying here, his question is there a need to regulate the agri-tech industry to weed out fraudulent companies? Some known agri-tech companies are owing investors. This will erode public confidence in this sector. But rather than take that question, I will ask you, how do we regulate the agri-tech industry?
Okay, I think the question is not to regulate the agri-tech industry, is to regulate crowdfunding. And a lot of people have matched agri-tech with crowdfunding. And many times you hear people say agri-tech, when they're referring to agri-tech, they're referring to crowdfunding as it were. I think once there's that clarity, and that's something that will take some time to get to, because, maybe because FarmCrowd was the first major crowdfunding platform that came up, and it was focused on crowdfunding for agriculture. Then you had a lot of clones that came up and then did something similar. So people match the two together. I think what we need to see is some form of regulation in the crowdfunding space. And right now, maybe not now, I think in the last 1 year and 6 months, we've been engaging actively with the Security Exchange Commission. They've been having conversations with major players in the crowdfunding space to discuss how to come up with regulations for that space. But they're also very careful about how they go about this. They've released the first draft for regulation for the crowdfunding space, which came up in February. They got feedback from a lot of stakeholders on what to do on that. And then they're looking at coming up with a new and the final regulation framework, which will come out maybe this last quarter of the year. Now, it's a welcome development because you want to be in a place where running your business, you don't stand the risk of being put in the same basket with somebody else doing something similar to what you're doing, but has ulterior motive for doing that. So I think it's a welcome development. How stringent it will be or how flexible it will be will depend on the conversations that they've had with us and other stakeholders and see how they take that in. But I think it's something that is welcome. Now, having said that, in the agri-tech space, I do not want to see any form of regulation. If you regulate that, you're literally regulating innovation. Because in that space, you're talking about people, for instance, I have a friend of mine that uses drones to provide fertilizer, that sprays fertilizers on the farm. He's in the agri-tech space. Are you going to go and start regulating him? And you have another person that is building mobile apps to get farmers better information on the farm. They are in the agri-tech space. So I wouldn't want to see regulation for agri-tech space, but in the crowdfunding space. Now, bringing it home to farm crowding. For us, we've now differentiated the two businesses. So there's a crowdfunding platform, a crowdfunding business. It has its own board. It has its own team, and that is in Crowdinvest. That runs the crowdfund for not just agriculture, but in other sectors, real estate, transportation. Then farm crowding now is focused on using technology to connect farmers with many other services that will make sense in the food value chain. So I think that is what we're excited about as a business today. But David, there's one thing that I've been hearing a lot of comments on the other issues that other speakers have been speaking on, and I don't know when I'll be able to also talk on some of those issues. What Adelaja, what Angel was saying is very important. It's something that people don't pay attention to. There was a time we were getting people to give us land banks. We're building a land bank, so people were giving us their land to see how we could cultivate. The problem is not getting access to land, it's land preparation. It can take 50% of your entire production cost. Land preparation is a major investment that we need to, this now is not where the private sector will do all. This is where the government has to play a major role. Land preparation, irrigation services, these are very expensive ventures to put into place to get core production to thrive. I saw a question about a person talking about losing, his brother lost investment in the farm. And that is because I guess the guy planted in the season when he was looking at rain-fed farming, and maybe the rains didn't come according to the plan. And then you now have some form of drought, and he's not able to get the right crops or the right production from that farm. That in itself would have been solved with some form of irrigation facility put in place. But it's not something that your everyday farmer will be able to afford. Security is a major issue. I had a problem where some of my farmers, some of my farm coordinators had to, the community of farmers were teaching them how to shoot guns to protect themselves. I had to get them to come off from that farm project. I'm not mentioning names of the state, but these are issues we are dealing with on a daily basis. And I can't be investing in producing, and also I'm investing so much in security, I'm investing so much in land preparation. So I think those are very core things to deal with. The last thing is market access. I want to mention that that is a major place. The commodity trading and exchange platform, thank God for what the likes of FX are doing. Thank God for what we in FarmCrowd are doing with our FarmCrowd aggregation too. But how many farmers can we serve? If we have over 30 million of them that are producing every year, where are they trading on? Where are they bringing their commodities to get the right margin from farming as a business? So I think those are major core things I just wanted to re-echo, because every time Angel was talking about it, I think her line was cutting, but I wanted to use the opportunity to re-echo that message. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Onyeka. You know, that's very good. You see, a lot of these issues are actually, to be honest with you, if we had 2 hours, we'd keep going. Let me quickly, it's a struggle when you're looking at all your questions and you, okay, let me go to Kola. Kola, so two things, I'm gonna ask you two questions in one. One is this, for a new potential investor, how does one get into this sector, into the agri sector? So this is someone that says, I have money, how do I get into this sector? And what does one focus upon? I'm going to tell you why I'm asking that question, Kola. The second question to you, Kola, is what are the ways through which startup agri firms in cultivation, supply chain, and retail can partner with organizations such as yours, Baba Gunner, and Farm Crowdy? Those are the two questions that I'm throwing to you. And the reason I'm saying that is I know part of your model does this like I don't think you call it franchising, but where you can basically take from one and then watch over the other. So can you just talk into those two areas? I'm an investor, and this is a very personal question even to me, because at times when I've had some savings, I'm like, oh, I want to go into farming. People say, you can't be an absentee farmer, not in poultry, not in fishery, not in cassava farming. So you're like, okay, let me just go back to the stock market. So, Mr. Masha, over to you.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for that. I think your friends have given you very good advice. The reality is, like with many things in life, it's not, you can't, if you want to think about investing in agriculture from the standpoint of you want to put capital to work and participate in the agriculture industry, I think they're great. It's great to see that the Securities and Exchange Commission is going to start regulating opportunities for investors to participate in that space. The reality, though, is if you really want to participate in the agriculture sector, there's no excuse, there's no substitute for doing what folks like Rotimi Williams are doing, where you have to commit yourself to that. When we started, I lived in a tiny little village. Started off by farming 1.5 hectares myself, and what the challenges were, so on and so forth, before you would start scaling to, now, nearly 10 years in, we're doing over 80,000 acres now. But you've got to start small, understand the risks, and then be prepared to scale very rapidly. But there's no substitute for getting on the ground and rolling your sleeves up, particularly in agriculture. So I'm sure, unfortunately, I'm sure that's not what a lot of folks want to hear, but the reality is that's how folks that have been able to be successful in agriculture have been able to accomplish that. To the second question around partnerships on the supply chain side, I think the reality is, we work with hundreds of SME. I think last year alone, we probably had over 1,000 different partners that we worked with that were registered to work with us on the logistics side. As Babangona, this year, just the next 12 to 18 months, we're going to be moving somewhere in the range of about 200,000 metric tons of stuff, right? And so there's opportunities to definitely partner with lots of organizations to support in the supply chain.
Wow. Thank you so much. Mosunmola, I'm coming to you. I'm seeing some questions that people are directly at you. I'll take two of those. Gosh, okay. We'll try and cover as much of these questions as possible. I'm seeing a very major question here on security that I think Rotimi should just take on, but let me go to Ms. Umoru first. There's a question here that says, what should a would-be poultry farmer do to succeed in this space? That's the first question to you, Mosun, and I'm going to back that up with another one saying, a group of women need mentoring in farming. We're just about to start out. How do we have access to Ms. Mosunmola and Mr. Onyeka? So please speak into that. Thank you.
Okay, so for someone who wants to go into the poultry sector, I'm always very careful to give people a blanket regulation. But foremost, you can't go into a sector or business that you have no knowledge of. You either have to pay for the knowledge, get the knowledge, or you learn the hard way. So my strong advice is you either go in to take a proper course that helps you understand how that space works, and it's you can do both, or you hire someone who has the knowledge to help you set up, and you pay a fee, and then you drive your business. So it depends on what the entry point is for you. At what scale are you willing to invest? Are you coming at a micro level? If it's at a micro level, then you can take your time and learn the ropes and then take a short course. But if you're going to invest a medium to large scale, then you've got to do it right. You can't just, you've got to develop a business plan. You have to analyze your feasibility. Where are you situating your farm? Locational feasibility needs to be clear. We're talking about irrigation, access to water. Even for your livestock production, the quality of water, you've got to test the water at that location. You've got to build the right structure for breeding your chickens. There's so many things that have to go into place. So planning is what I say first. That's your first step. So identify your entry point, plan properly, get knowledge, get help, professional help where necessary. And then that would help me move into the question around mentoring. Mentoring, as easy as mentoring is, it requires work on the part of the interested mentee. So I would, through the Abira initiative that we run, I would be able to mentor some who sign on to some of the programs, but I am not very careful to openly tell people that I will mentor you, right? You've got to sign on to some program that we're working on that then allows us to help you, or that's basically it, but it's not impossible. So I will share an email address with the team, and I'm sure that we can help such people get started through a mentoring program, whether by your church or the people at the platform, or they reach out directly to us at Abira initiative.
All right, ma'am.
Sure, who in my team is on the call.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much. Mr. Williams, I'm back to you. Someone says, how viable is agriculture going to be if security is an additional overhead? The costs for security for a farmer can be as high as 300,000 naira for 4 policemen negotiated with state police detachments. The government has to match more seriousness to the challenge of security, else we won't be able to get into commercial level agri. Now, my question to that is, recently, at least in the last few months, we've seen the Southwest Western states come together and create a security firm. Or let me say a security, not a firm, a security, what do we call it? Organization? Outfit, thank you. How, and a number of times when I read all the things this is about, it's focused more like the urban and the city kind of areas, prevent stealing and so on and so forth. It doesn't seem to address what we're looking at in terms of agriculture. So is there a way to combine these two? And should the federal government really just hands off and let's have security at the state and local level so that investments in agricultural lives and property can all be secure? And my second question would be to you again. It says, what is the plan for dry season farming, taking into consideration the climate change? I know we've spoken about irrigation a bit today, but you and I were talking yesterday about some of the challenges, especially in rice farming, going on that people are allocating or attributing to lack of rain. So can you just take those two, please? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So thank you. The first question on security and the cost of police. So I think the issue we're discussing here when it comes to security is not necessarily the number of men you have or just having police with you. It's the actual ability to secure. Okay, so for example, you have policemen with you, right? But what if one of your workers get killed and then your laborers decide not to come to the farm anymore? What then do you do, even with your forced security men? So those are the issues. It's a wider issue. It's not just about you, right? It's about the entire community. How do you secure the entire community? And like I said earlier, that's part of what Resolute is trying to do. And I'm happy that Mr. Adelaja-Kuye mentioned that earlier about community policing. And in some sense, what we're doing is sort of like digital community policing, where all the members of the community have access to a phone and an app where they can communicate of an imminent attack or ongoing attack, and then with them relate them what we do. And it's just not scaling fast enough because there's so many issues springing up in different local governments or communities across the north and the south now. So it's a major issue. Is always take the name of the community you want to farm or that local government and Google it and add conflict to it. So if it's Surulere plus conflict or Surulere plus crisis, so you know fully well what you're going into, you can research, investigate, and see how if it's possible to mitigate or work with it, or better still just shelve it totally. So that's advice I give to most people that ask me. With regards to irrigation, this is a sore topic for me at the moment because in August in Plateau here, and what I'm also learning in most places, we went through 3 weeks. Learned that might have been more of no rain. Now, typically, I will have pumps on the farm, but this season we just decided, every time we had pumps on the farm, nothing. I mean, we never get to use them. We weren't ready for that, and then we had 3 weeks of no rain, and what that typically led to was something called rice blast, which is when you have drought or periods of lack of water, then it aggravates the blast potential, the fungal potential within the seed. And all the farms in this area have that blast. All the farms. There's not one farm I've been to and I've looked at their grain that doesn't have the black spots. Luckily for us, it's just in a particular area and we've been able to contain it. But a lot of farmers are suffering from that. And the problem is a lot of them don't actually know what it is. So I keep asking them, do you know what this is? And they say, oh, no, it's just lack of water. When there was no rain, but that when rain comes, everything will go. And I said, no, it's not about no rain. This is a fungal infection. You need to spray. This is a problem. And so there's also that lack of education of diseases that affect rice that you find in the community people don't pay attention to. They do not know. And this is another major issue. So when you look at all of this and you add it to, okay, what then does this mean for rice production in the upcoming year? And coupled with the fact that we don't necessarily invest much during the dry season, what next? What then do we do? And then with the issue with dry season farming this year, I honestly don't know what to expect because with this whole climate change, honestly, I'm sold on the whole idea of climate change now. After these 3 weeks of no rain, if I was skeptical before, I'm no longer skeptical. So I'd honestly say that irrigation needs to be looked at, especially if we're going to achieve self-sufficiency in rice production. One cycle a year doesn't cut it. And to the earlier issues that were discussed about government intervention and effect, or I think Kola might have touched on that a bit. What I just want to add to that is, look, there needs to be a cost-benefit analysis as to how much has been spent on intervention versus the outcome of this intervention. It's just not about the timing or saying that, okay, you know, Nigeria is still young, we have this amount of time to go. If you're putting in 50 billion or 100 billion, I'm sorry, I need to see the price of rice crashing in the market over that period. If that is not happening, I'm sorry, your intervention is not working. You need to go back to the table and you need to review it. And that's exactly what we're seeing in rice. The fertilizer issue as well, we have a lot of fertilizer intervention, but the fertilizer never gets to the rural farmers. It's sold off from the local government point to other farmers that can afford the whole truck. You see, so all of this, that chain to get the inputs to the farmers also needs to be reviewed. And I think I'll just drop it there before I get in trouble.
Thank you very much for that. You know, you won't get into trouble here, but you are giving me a cause for concern as to what the cost of rice will be very soon. Can I please just invite all panelists that there are quite a number of questions that won't be able to take everything. So thank you, Angel. I was one of the questions I was going to ask you. I see you've provided a response. Someone was still saying, oh, they want to hear Mr. Onyeka's lovely voice on mentoring. So I've sent them to his comments in the chat box, realizing that we won't be able to cover everything. So I want to take a few more questions, if you would allow me.
Sorry, can I say one thing though? And I want to piggyback off of what Rotimi said earlier, and which is that a lot of us tend to stick to just agriculture, but I think I have to commend Pretty Miss Farmer for the work that she did in also driving policy. Many of us also have to be advocates for policy, and we have to lobby for the laws that help us in the agricultural sector. We cannot leave it to, like I ask myself, how many on this panel are part of any farmer associations? You know, we cannot leave it to political farmers. We cannot leave it to vested interests. We have to make sure that we're advocating for the smallholder farmer. We have to make sure that we're advocating for infrastructure and agriculture. We also need to make sure that we're keeping people accountable. Like Rotimi said, where are the funds that are supposed to be going into these sectors? Where are the funds for security? Where are the funds for infrastructure in the agricultural sector for rural development? If we are not keeping them accountable, it's going to be very, very difficult for us going into 2030, going into 2050. And lastly, a lot of people want to invest in agriculture, but we also need patient investors. People want that overnight money, 30% in 6 months, 50% in 1 day. It's nice, but I think we also need those big investors who are patient enough and really want to see the sector grow and ready to handhold people. I think Kola is one of them, a patient investor, and his patience has really paid off. But we do implore more people to be patient investors.
Thank you very much, Angel. Interesting. I was going to go back to Kola. That look, your vision is to make 1 million smallholder farmer members more money by 2025. We're in 2020. You're 5 years to go. This is ambitious. It's laudable, and it's essential to be able to make agriculture attractive again. But with an estimated 38 million smallholder farmers in Nigeria, how can we scale provision of much needed end-to-end agricultural extension and support services across the country, similarly to what you guys do at Babangona?
So I think at the core of what it takes to scale is the key limiting constraint is working capital, right? The reality is, if you look at the needs, most people completely underestimate how much is required in working capital for farming. A typical farmer would require somewhere in the range of about 200,000 naira to farm 1 hectare, right? So if you look at the needs of farmers across the continent, across Nigeria, we're talking about probably somewhere in the range of about $40 billion in just working capital finance.
Wow.
Not to mention investment in CapEx, other infrastructure, rural roads, irrigation, so on and so forth. Just working capital is a $40 billion investment. So I think the reality is that to solve that problem, I think we have to think about how we're going to raise that capital and think very, very innovative. If you look at the way that it's done in other parts of the world, the U.S. agricultural financing mechanism that the government plays a very critical role in trying to crowd in private sector capital to accomplish that. So unless we start thinking about these problems at that scale, I'm not sure we're going to get there.
Wow. Thank you for that, Kola. Let me come to you, Ms. Umoru. When Angel was speaking earlier on, she spoke about your work in policy, and I know you were a technical advisor to the Minister of Agriculture. What's your take on these security issues, and how do we really get women and the youth back into agriculture?
Okay, thank you very much, David. So I'll start from the security issues. And I think that the part where, and if you listen to the platform in the morning, you probably heard Professor Balaji speak about community policing and the report of the 2015 National Conference. We're not in short supply of policies. The real issue is who is taking ownership and responsibility and actioning the policies that would actually bring the impact that we seek. I'll be a big graphic. I mean, everyone is trying to be careful. I'm not going to be careful, so that we can all go back home with a sense of responsibility and urgency today. So one of my younger mentees in the sector had her fiance killed, literally about a month and a half ago, just as we were coming out of the lockdown. You must have heard about her in Oyo State, right? Young, vibrant lady coming from her farm on a Friday evening. She would spend Monday to Friday on the farm and then go home on Friday with her fiance, who works not too far from her own farm, from her own operations. And they were attacked by the guys we have called bandits, headsmen, how Fulani she described them to be. And they were attacked. She was kidnapped. Her boyfriend, her fiance shot, and they left him in the pool of his own blood. And she was then kidnapped, and her family asked for, and they demanded a ransom from her family. Now, that situation has become statistic, you know, one person, that person, two persons. Rotimi just said 6. Look, we just acquired 7. Okay, let me leave the numbers, but we just acquired 750 hectares of land in that same estate. And today, as I speak to you, our workers can't go to farm. We are now worried about their security because there's a new strategy to attack them when they go to get their food from the local market on market days. Now, what are we going to do? It's time for us to become more strategic about community policing. The federal government hasn't done enough, so there's no point pretending like we have fixed this problem. We have called it all sorts of names, but there hasn't been any real punishment, punitive measure put in place that has deterred these bandits from operating. Now, we've got to be more resolute in our approach, and this is where citizens' engagement and interaction comes in. When Angel said, oh, Ms. Umoru, you have put some time to committing to influencing policy. When everyone sits in their pretty home and points the finger at somebody who is in government or somebody, and we do not interact and work together to find a solution, it's when it comes to you that you then know that it's a real problem. Right now, it's them, the people, the farmers, the rural settlers. But sooner or later, if we do not manage this menace, it's going to haunt all of us because they're going to move out of these rural communities and they will go in search of food and money, and who knows where else they will stop. Every time I have to travel out of Lagos, I begin to worry about paying 300,000 to 400,000 naira to security operatives. It's not a sustainable model. So we've all got to come together and speak to this issue on how we will address it as a collective. I have some recommendations about how state government will work. I mean, the Amoteku scheme is one step. It's just one step. But at the very rural level, we've got to begin to sensitize our people, leverage technology, communicate. Everyone is treating it like it's the other person's issue. No, it's everybody's issue. We've got to come to the table and advocate for local policing. We've got to advocate for local policing. We can no longer sit pretty and watch it like it's just one of those things. It's not one of those things. I am a lady. I could get raped. That's how intense these things are. I have to travel with men. I love to drive now. I can no longer drive to my farm without security operatives following me. We can't sustain that. How many policemen are you going to assign to every citizen? If you report these bandits to the policemen, it is as bad as they would arrest them. I mean, the cattle headers is another menace. They come into your field, they destroy your crops because they want to feed their livestock, and then you report to the police, 2-3 days, they are released. I do not want to go into tribalism, but you see, tribalism plays out. I think that at policy level, we want to be a nation, but we've got to begin to think out of the box. Should we stop assigning non-indigent police officers at certain state level? So let the Hausa man be the commissioner of police in the north. Let the Yoruba man be the commissioner of police in the south. Let us look at it. Onyeka did not want to talk about the pain they went through in an investment. Let's stop being shy about this issue. Let's come out. I'm not here to try and be overtly politically correct, because then nobody understands what we're going through. If I am raped, killed, maimed on my way from the farm tomorrow, everybody will do 1 minute silence only if they care. And that's the end. Pretty Miss Farmer is gone. Someone else moves on. We can't do that. I want to leave a legacy for my children. So we've got to all be involved in advocacy. We've all got to be involved with the government and policy framework, and it can no longer be business as usual. It has to be business unusual. Now, to get women and youth involved, they're currently involved, right? Excuse me. We just need to upskill them. Okay. There's a debt of knowledge. So we're going to take a multi-pronged approach. So I In my organization, we work with the local, rural women and young people by doing seminars, trainings, leveraging curriculums that have worked. However, the time now is to leverage technology by collaborating with people like Onyeka, who can convert some of our training sessions and modules into and place them on an app that people can now begin to use and access on their mobile phones. So we're beginning to see a lot of that happening. We're doing trainings and getting young people to fly drones. I fly the drone myself. I had to start learning that. But we need to see more young people who will be excited. So we've got to make agriculture, I used to say sexy, right? But we've got to make it cool enough for young people and women to stay in. If there's no access to capital, if there's no access to infrastructure, if there's no access to power, if there's no access to basic amenities, Angel was talking about irrigation. To irrigate 1 hectare by using small drip irrigation lines, right, is an average, it was about 350,000 naira to buy a set before, a kit. Today, with the current exchange rate, we're looking at almost double that cost. So barrier to entry is not getting any lower. So we've got to look at policy framework.
I think that was for an acre, my sister. That's even for an acre. Yeah.
It's just for an acre. Yes, that's just for an acre. So if you were going to go into commercial operations, 5, 10, 20 hectares, how do you afford that as a startup? So barrier to entry is lower. Now, what we're also doing is, what I have been rooting for is interacting with commercial financial institutions. I've had series of meetings back to back. We've got to start creating innovative funding vehicles for agriculture. For me, it's a bit embarrassing that we will all get up as practitioners here and go and try to raise financing abroad, right? The bulk of the funds that Kola has ever used to drive innovation and impact in his work was not sourced locally. Now, is it that our government never had funding? We did have money. What did we do with it? So it's time to begin to even hold our stakeholders. Look, we're all stakeholders. Dr. Kolade said it in the morning. We've got to focus on the fact that this affects us all, impacts us directly. And we've all got to find our place in the puzzle and bring our competence to bear. So I have great ideas. Kola has phenomenal ideas. Onyeka has fantastic ideas, but we need to piece it together and bring other people from the sector, from other sectors to work with us. The banks can't just sit in isolation and cap interest rates at 36%, 27%. Now we're looking at some interesting lowered rates, 16, 17%. But for how long? How would businesses thrive? So one of the things I've been saying, and I would re-echo here, is the need for us to, one, invest in education. We cannot treat agriculture in isolation. It all starts from the basic training at primary level. So you want to bring someone who is not literate. He's already 28. How do you begin to teach him to use apply fertilizer when he's from? It's a lot of work, but can we start that orientation at a very early age? That's one approach. The other approach is that for those in our tertiary institutions, that the training has to be infused with some practice. So we've got to be more deliberate. So the Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Education, Trade and Investment, Budget and Planning cannot plan in isolation. That's what we've done. That's what I spoke about fragmentation earlier. We've got to all come together and work together. It is in the interest of the greater good. It is not about Mosunmola or Pretty Miss Farmer. It is about food production in Nigeria. So everything I do is geared at plugging into a national agenda. Now, my business may be bigger than Onyeka's own. Onyeka's own may be bigger than mine. That's irrelevant. Those are pure schematics. But in the real sense, we all are a part of a big puzzle, and we've all got to play actively in impacting that sector. Education is key, leveraging technology is key, putting the right people in place is key, and ensuring that we all contribute to the work at hand. That's the critical.
Thank you very much, Mosunmola. Thank you so much. We're at time. So I'll just crave your indulgence. I need to ask Onyeka this question because I think it's important. And Onyeka, in answering that question, this question I'm about to ask you, I'll give you an extra minute. So I'll give you like 2.5 minutes to answer this question and give us your last thoughts concerning how do we reposition this. We've heard about security, all through the comments, all through the questions from each and every one of you panelists today. You've mentioned security as a major issue. How does big data and artificial intelligence, how are they being employed to aid agriculture in Nigeria today, or how can they be employed to aid agriculture in Nigeria today? Over to you, Onyeka, an answer and your final thoughts. Thank you.
Okay, we noticed that when we were trying to connect farmers with funding, one of the biggest issues we were dealing with was the profile of the ideal farmer that was going to get this funding from us. That was when we were connecting them with structured finance. Now you had a situation where we ran these farmers through a database of maybe the central bank, and it tells you that this farmer is owing 50% on a previous loan he has taken, or he's currently gone through a program and shouldn't be accessing new funds. But the farmer has brought himself in front of you to say, nobody has given me funding in the last 10 years. I'm a poor person, I need your help. But what the system is showing is that just 1 year ago, the farmer took maybe 200 to 500,000 naira and has used it to marry a second wife rather than putting it into the core production that needs to happen on the farm. That became a major problem. So what we then did was, the first thing we did was speaking towards big data, artificial intelligence. These are big words. I try to simplify things in my own way based on the problems I face. First thing we did was we started profiling farmers. In profiling farmers, we had to build our own system to get biometrics of the farmers, so we have good biometrics, we have operational history of the farmers, we're able to map out the location of their farms, we're able to get their financial history, and we do our own form of census. And so from community to community, we're able to do that. We then got to a place where we had tablets, customized tablets we fashioned out in China that allow the farmers to have their thumbprint scanned so that we know that if we're dealing with the farmer, is a proper farmer. Moving that a step further, we started getting the farmers to own wallet accounts with banks. And so they started having BVNs because that started becoming really important in the scheme of things. Now we have 180,000 farmers that have gone through this process with us. We're now in that position where we say we can now connect them with the right kind of funding if they fit the profile of the farmer that needs that kind of funding. Now, this is us from Farm Crowding doing this because we want to solve our own issues on how we get the farmers to get the right kind of funding. Looking forward at how you deploy artificial intelligence or big data to solving many other problems that may come up. It will center around core production. It is centered about input disbursement. It is centered around market access for the farmers. Once you take care of these three main things, I think that is where big data and artificial intelligence will make a significant role. We have a significant role in transforming the way we do agriculture in the country. Speaking specifically on artificial intelligence, I mean, I recently saw in Texas, that was 2 years ago, not recently, where there was a particular farm run by the Farmers Business Network that had, so you initially had maybe about 30 to 40 people that were operating a 10,000 acre farm, right? And then what you had in this scenario was they had this IBM sort of server that was in the middle of the farm, strategic in the middle of the farm, and then pinpointing several other servers that were around the borders of the farm. Those servers will withstand rain, they will withstand sunshine. They were there, they were giving data to 1, 2, or 3 maximum people that were in the server room, getting information around the state of the crop, getting information around where nutrients needed to move more into the soil, getting information around whether the weeds were growing, how to deal with that. And then they deploy drones when necessary into the farm to spray or to provide the necessary things needed on the farm. They had tractors that were powered without humans driving them, that were processing, that were cultivating, that were spraying the farms. And so you had you have a scenario where ideally that kind of farm, if it was in Nigeria, you will say 1 hectare to a farmer, right? If you're doing 5,000, that would be about, say roughly about 4,000 hectares of farmland. So 4,000 farmers in Nigeria ideally should be working on that farm. In Texas, they were saying they replaced 50 farmers on 4,000 hectares with those machines. That is the opportunity with artificial intelligence. So in my closing remarks, I would say this. Let us find ways, I'm speaking from a technology perspective now, find ways to look at the entire food value chain, pick out the solutions that you think you can create using technology and deploy this. Start very small, test that model, similar to what Kola was saying, mitigate the risk from end to end, and then scale really fast because there are over 30 million people that will need your solution if you create value for them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Onyeka. Thank you so much. Let me move over to Angel. We've said a lot here today. I've not said what I normally say, which is I always tell people, please, let's stop thinking about government. But it seems as if we have to have government in the conversation. You're a senior special assistant to a state governor. What are your closing thoughts in terms of what we need to do, both for security and to really enhance agriculture in Nigeria, not just as a contributor to GDP, but even as a livelihood means? Over to you, ma'am, with your closing thoughts. 2 minutes.
Thank you so much. In terms of security, as I said before, it is supposed to be driven by the communities. So, for example, let's go back to this and reimagine the situation when we talk about security. I'll talk from the viewpoint of the Southwest. There are 2 areas that we see pose the most threats, right? And number 1 is kidnappings, and number 2 is farmer-herder crisis, right? From the aspect of kidnapping, definitely concerted effort in terms, there are communities that are hiding these kidnappers. There are communities that are benefiting financially from the activities of some of these rogue agents. The same thing with the cattle herder farmers crisis is that we've gone from having cattle herders who were relatively innocuous and who, went around with their stick and their radio, and we've now shifted to cattle herders that go around with guns and weapons. And so if we were able to look at this, let's say from a policy standpoint, right? A lot of states just aggressively outright ban open grazing. And they say, we don't want them here, it becomes tribalist, but let's look at this without any sentiment. Let's look at this for what it really is, right? You want to be able to make sure that there are policies that at the state level, I'm speaking from the state level, that punish those people who engage in illegal activities. And you want to make sure that you are able to empower communities to enforce those laws. So if you have a law that says that these are specific grazing routes, you need to follow that law with technologies, maybe RFID tags, and say, for every cattle that comes into the state, if that cattle is not tagged by the state and a community catches that cow, that cow will be seized. The owner of that cattle will be either imprisoned or something else, because even, like, for example, the Arewa community in Ogun State is very, very active in the state. They're a positive influence in the state. They're coordinated. Unfortunately, when you have cattle rustlers or when you have rogue herdsmen that come into the state, they destabilize activities for the Arewa community that are functioning in a legal way within the state. They're part of our stakeholders within the state. So the best, if you put together policy that the Arewa community can enforce and tell their people, come to any of our communities in the border communities and register your cattle, or go to the ministry's cattle control posts and register your cattle. If you're found in a community and your cattle is not registered, then the state should by all means have the right to seize that cattle, and the proceeds from the cattle should be able to go to the community. And that would deter a lot of people from engaging in those sort of activities. Then you have to be able to leverage on technologies to have drone surveillance of your communities, get the security agencies to work with the communities. And I can't stop emphasizing the importance of community policing and also local courts and alternative dispute resolution strategies. I feel that if you're able to put those together and slowly gravitate and shift people into the concept of ranching, you'll see that a lot of these things will be deterred, and you'll see people will want to get into agriculture more because their livelihood will be secured. The other thing that I want to talk about is the importance of, I think, governments specifically capitalizing on this issue of technology. So for example, if we were able to catalog all of the agricultural lands within the state and digitize them with GIS, you're able to then say, this is where we're producing. These are the farms that are actively producing. These are the areas that need development. You're able to then allocate resources to those areas. You can also tag things like security and say to agric investors, these are the areas where, because sometimes it's even the community themselves are hostile. And so you want to make sure that you're investing into a community that even wants you there. And so when you get the land in that place, you want to know and look at that data and say, that community, they're helpful, they're beneficial. Even in Ogun State, we have a lot of indigents and a lot of communities who welcome investors. They become your number one employees, your number one champions when you come and invest in their communities. And then there's some communities where they don't yet fully understand the importance of investment into their communities and how agriculture can be a catalyst for economic development for them. So I think, number one, as a state level, we need to do sensitization for our people to better understand why helping to secure these companies secures their future and their interests. Also on the part of investors, the importance of carrying the community along, the importance of engaging with the community and making sure that they know that the land is not just being taken away from them, but they have some level of stake. When they have a stake in the success of that business, you'll see that nobody can come and touch the business that you're doing. We had a similar example where there was a community, nobody wanted to invest in that community. Anybody that went to go and sort out land issues there, they found it difficult. But when we went into that community and we made sure that part of the lands that the state cleared went to the people in that community, they're the number one people protecting the community. Lots of people used to be kidnapped in that area, and now you can safely go into that area and farm. And the members of the community are the ones who will protect you. They reach out to you. They want to just feel like they have some level of dignity and some level of control and stake in their own communities, because like we said, lack of education, makes people to not understand the laws. So land that may belong to government, as far as they're concerned, is their ancestors' land. So that level of education also needs to be there. And then lastly, I think the conversation on systems, we have a lot of models that have been quite successful. We have a lot that have been not so successful, and some that were flat out horrible. That monitoring and evaluation of these different models and our ability to make sure that we're documenting that and then scaling up proven, sustainable models and systems that work is what's going to see us forward. I would rather replicate 100 of what Onyeka is doing than 1,000 of what didn't work. I'd rather replicate, 1,000 of what Kola is doing than 100 of what didn't work, because we don't want to keep putting good money after bad. So I really think that in some of the government interventions that have been done at the state level and at the federal level, yes, I think there's an importance to partner with the academic institutions to have independent reviews of policy, independent reviews of other activities that have been done. So thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Oh, wow. So this is a conversation that needs to go on, but we actually have to wrap up. Let me come to you, Mr. Williams. I have a quick question that I've actually wanted to ask you. So we have the Anchor Borrowers Program, the ban on importation of rice or sale of forex to rice, to cassava and maize, I think. We have the border closures and all those things that seemingly protect and drive farms like yours and businesses like yours in agriculture. Are they sustainable? Can you answer that even as you give us your closing remarks? Thank you, sir.
Well, okay. So first thing first, I'd like to start by saying that while we all look at this intervention, so if you look at the way the government went about it, I believe that the intentions were good, again, but the plan and execution were poor. if you look at the ban on rice importation and most of the other produce, it wasn't necessarily for the purpose of developing the rice sector. It was a lack of effects in the first place that drove that initiative. So we need to separate these two issues, right? And then also, if you look at the interventions that have gone on, the likes of the anchor borrower scheme, I think there's a slight confusion as to what exactly it is they're trying to achieve. It's a good initiative if you're a social scheme and you're trying to create employment. But you see, you need to be clear on, do I want to create employment or do I want to develop the agricultural sector? And through that, create employment. Because the way it's structured now, right, by way of you get an anchor, you give money through an anchor to get outgrowers. I'm a corporate farmer. I go to the farm. I like to do everything on my own. I like to employ people and get work done. I don't want to do an outgrower scheme because the economical practices in the rural area are not necessarily best practice. So it may not work for me. That means I cannot tap into the anchor borrower scheme, which means that I'm not going to get the necessary funding that allows me to scale up very quickly, except I go to a commercial bank. So then what that tells me is that the government is really looking at ways to create employment and more of a social scheme than looking at how we can really develop the agricultural sector. There are a lot more people that want to come into this sector that don't have access to funding. And there are a lot of people in the communities that doing their 1-2 hectares is great. The minute you tell them to go to 10 hectares, it's a problem. I've had this experience. I've given people fertilizer and free fertilizer. I decide to half it and sell the other half without understanding the implication of this. So for me, I think these policies, like I said earlier on, we need to do like cost benefit analysis. A lot of money was given to a particular state about 3 years ago, right, for rice production. What exactly has come of that money? Where is all the rice? Do you understand? We've seen the link between Lagos and Kebbi State for the, what's it called now? The Lake Rice Initiative, for example, that, by the way, disrupted my own pricing at that point in time when it was launched because I couldn't sell my rice. You understand? What has come of that scheme now? Because it did create a lot of issues in the industry when it came to distribution and marketing, which a lot of people didn't also identify. You know, so when it comes to sustainable schemes, I think, like Mosun said earlier, all stakeholders need to be at that table. Do you understand? If you're going to discuss rice, all rice farmers, it doesn't always have to be through the association. The association don't always have the best interest at heart. A lot of them are political farmers, and I've always said that, which is why I refuse to join them. I like my own voice. I want to be able to speak freely about issues that concern me. And I also want to have that freedom to approach the government and table my issues without having the negative force behind me. So that for me are the issues, and all stakeholders need to be at the table, and we need to address the value chain from the beginning to the end, from soil to table. I mean, it's not just starting from milling, which is what some other policies advocated for, which is what caused the issue now. We started from milling and then tried to go back into production, whereas we should have started from seed production to milling, to the storage, and then to the distribution, the natural course of it. So we need to go back to the drawing board from the seedling and begin to develop the sector step by step. You can't rush nature. You know, you put a seed in the ground, it takes 4 months to grow, it takes 4 months to grow. There's nothing you can do about it. You cannot rush that process. You understand? So that's, for me, is what I believe the government needs to do, is to take it step by step, look at the whole policy again, the whole intervention scheme, who exactly is benefiting from this scheme. Look at the clearest indication is the price of that commodity in the market. Look at the pricing of the commodity you created these interventions for. Have they gone down over the years? Paddy price has been the highest this season. I saw it go as high as 360,000 a ton. I've never seen it that high before. It doesn't make any sense. And we're throwing billions at it. So these are some of the things that need to be looked at.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you so much for that. Now I come to you, Kola. Before you give us your last thoughts, I have one last question for you. A recent newspaper article reveals that Nigeria has joined the FAO's, the Food and Agriculture Organization's hand-in-hand initiative, which aims to help countries develop independent investment plans to close food gaps, end malnutrition, support economic development, and reduce environmental impacts with concrete evidence. At this time, do we need more programs, or do we just need to implement, evaluate, and choose the right ones from the ones we have? Let's have an answer to that and your closing comments, Mr. Masha. Thank you.
Well, I think, so fundamentally, I think the idea behind a program like that is really around how the government can utilize its resources to catalyze in more investment. And at the end of the day, the problem we've had in the agriculture sector that I think has stifled its growth over the last 60 years is the fact that it's many initiatives actually did not catalyze and attract in private sector investment. Oftentimes, it actually stifled or actually competed with the private sector. Now, I think under this administration, you've seen a lot of movement towards trying to attract crowd-in capital. So I think we need more initiatives like that. And I think the government, the central bank has done a lot of work to try to channel capital into the sector. And I think there's opportunity to do more, become a little bit more innovative, potentially looking at providing more extensive guarantees and things like that. Now, in terms of final points, I wanted to just touch on the issue around insecurity. I think it is a very real concern. I think the story that was discussed earlier is my heart goes out to that family, quite frankly. Now, the reality though is we have to ask ourselves, how do we get to this point? Because 20, 30 years ago, this was not a problem. This was not something that people discussed. And I think fundamentally we forget that, really what is the root cause of this, right? From 1990 to 2010, Nigeria saw about 20 million young people enter the Nigerian oversaturated workforce, triggering unemployment rates to hit absolute record highs of over 60% in some cases. If you look at 2010 to 2030, 4 times the number of youth, 18 million people, the population of Germany, the world's 4th largest economy, are entering the Nigerian workforce. So the reality as a country, if we, I think security and increasing security plays a critical role in solving this challenge. But I think at the end of the day, if you have a severed artery and you put a Band-Aid on it, you will still bleed out. You have to go and actually to the root cause and see how can you stop the bleeding. And I think we need to think very critically about all the policies that we're putting in place and so on and so forth, because there is no magic border. There's nothing. These challenges began in the Northeast, or some and then we had some challenges in the South. We had pockets of challenges in the Middle Belt, and then we're seeing it just keeps spreading. And so I think we have to really fundamentally ask ourselves, how can we address that root problem of providing the millions and millions and millions of young people economic opportunities to prevent the spread of insecurity.
Thank you so much, Kola. This is a conversation that has to keep going. Let me come to Pretty Miss Farmer. 5 years ago, I read your an article or an interview that you gave, where you buttressed or highlighted a concern that, look, you've done a survey, the farmers' population is going to be declining over the next couple of years because the average age then, if I remember, was about 55. Right now, we're at that place where young people want to get into it. We have the insecurity issues. We have all the concerns of access to finance, which a number of you are already solving. But yet, there's still a lot of disinterest. I had to ask this question because of what Kola just finished saying. 19 million, 20 million. These jobs are not there. We all know they are not there. What strategies do we need to adopt or implement to try and change this narrative in 5 years, by 2025, where at least half, if not more, of the figures Kola has just mentioned of the unemployed youth can be kind of incorporated into successful agriculture? I keyword there being successful. They are making a living, maybe not a billionaire, but at least we're growing agriculture. Please answer that as you give us your last comments. Under 2 minutes, please, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, so that's a very interesting question, David. We've got to implement a lot of the recommendations that my colleagues here have shared. Don't treat anything in isolation. And I like the fact that Kola reeled out some interesting data sets. So how did we get here? So if we go back to the basics, it is because there is one debt of value Two, we haven't prioritized the real issues as a nation. Where are our investments going as a nation? It's time to begin to analyze what we're investing in. As it stands, the budget approval for 2020, can we all go critically analyze what we'll be spending money on in the budget that has just been approved? There's recurrent expenditure on things that are not going to impact us for another 5 years. How do we unpack that? Why are we spending money on things that are not shaping the narrative we desire? If the bulk of your national expenditure, if you, there've been, okay, so I'm not going to join those who trivialize the issue. Let's get serious. In 1 minute. If we're spending so much money on recurrent expenditure and we are subsidizing things that are not impacting livelihoods, then there's a misnomer. We've got to ensure, no country, very few countries are not subsidizing agriculture. But how are our subsidies in the agricultural sector spent? What are they spent on? Are we buying tools or equipment that are already obsolete? Or are we investing in new technology that is going to give us traction? How are we sourcing our inputs, seeds, fertilizer? How are we what are the distribution channels we're deploying? I served in government briefly, and I can tell you there's still a mismatch. And we need to fix that. If we do not fix the root cause, we're going to window dress the solution. So we've got to go back to addressing the issues from its roots. What are our priorities? We're supposed to invest a certain percentage of our budget on agriculture. We're not doing 2% investment as a nation. And you want that sector to catalyze growth for you. How? 2% of your budgetary spend is going to agriculture, and that's what you want to drive 10% GDP inclusion. How is that going to happen? It's sheer madness. I'm sorry, but that's what we're doing. So can we stop the insanity? Can we stop bleeding ourselves silly and dry and fix the problem? Because Nigerians know what the issues are, but we're not fixing it holistically. We're not embracing technology. Thank God for COVID. As painful as it is, thank God for COVID. It's a wake-up call to us. Government has failed globally. Now, for us as Nigerians, let's wake up. This is a wake-up call for us to begin to change the way we address all issues. And it cannot be a joke on social media. We've got to take the conversations a bit beyond social media to actioning certain things like Kola, Onyeka, Rotimi, Angel, and myself, and a few other stakeholders are doing. Let's begin to fix the issues from the root cause. So communal issues we've got to address. Why are the bandits hiding out in communities? Where do the values that brings out bad behaviors and expose bad behavior go? So from the home front, we've got to address all of these issues. Everyone, the churches, religious organizations, faith-based organizations, NGOs, CBOs, we've all got to work together in solving this problem. So yes, and to bring in young people, you can't bring in young people into an unattractive sector. They're not interested. It's got to be technology driven. It's got to be demand driven. Don't just buy solutions and procure inputs just because you have a budget. Procure inputs because we have identified a cooperative of farmers that have specific needs. Let our investment be targeted. What percentage are we investing in young people? What percentage are we investing in women? What support are we going to give the private sector to be able to act adequately, even when they have the financial resource to deploy? Those are the things that I would recommend that we do. And like I said, it's a collective effort. Don't point at Kola, don't point at Angel. Support Kola and support Angel, and help Pretty Miss Farmer and the others on this journey to actualize and deliver a Nigeria that is self-sufficient in food production. That's what we need to do.
Thank you, Miss.
Let's summarize it there, and we can take the conversation beyond the platform today.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you.
My pleasure.
So, I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago, my wife made a comment. She said, "Are we cursed or are we the curse? Are we cursed or are we the cause?" C-A-U-S-E. The problem of Nigeria is not because of a curse. It's because of people like you and I. And it reminds me of something that Richard Fuller said. It said, "You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a model that makes the existing model obsolete." We've heard from Mr. Rotimi Williams. We've heard from Ms. Mosunmola Umoru. We've heard from Mr. Onyeka Akumah. We've heard from Mr. Kola Masha. And we've heard from Mrs. Angel Adelaja-Kuye, passionately telling us the way forward, their own journeys, the pains, the challenges, yet they are committed to doing this. A very big thank you to all our panelists. Thank you for taking out your time. We've gone way over the budgeted time, but you kept with us. You're still answering questions for us. And like Ms. Umoru said, we're taking this conversation beyond this webinar to address all the issues that have been highlighted. We have over 20 questions that are yet to be answered, which we'll share among the panelists and probably send an email to you all. Thank you so much to all my panelists. Thank you so much to all the attendees. And to two people that have been so quiet, Chinonso and Esther, coordinating the background and doing all those things. Thank you to all of you. Once again, happy independence, and let's join hands together to make agriculture not only interesting and lucrative again, but to actually make Nigeria the great nation God created it to be. Thank you all so much, and God bless us all. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Good to see you, Onyeka.
Same here, ma'am.
Thank you.
I'll talk soon.